Money is the third part of the trifecta that we all as creatives are seeking. But I think it's one of those things that like everybody's seeking it, period. We're all chasing more money. We all want to have, nicer lifestyles, but when it comes to creative work, it's a bit of a, I'm not sure what the right phrase is, catch 22 or just a general conundrum. Like throughout my life, there was a time after graduate school, or even in school for that matter. We're thrifty, we'll call it. We're not like poor or anything like that because we're paying for education at university. But you don't have a lot of money. You don't have a lot of spare money, let's say, and you get really creative with how to find art supplies, how to choose projects based on budgets, things like this. And then of course, then after my, let's see, probably the biggest contrast would be when I was in the United Arab Emirates teaching at Zayed University, and they paid me a ton of money, and I had more money than I knew what to do with, and I spent it on art supplies. Now, did I make better work? And this is the sort of balancing act that I want to sort of put into this, is because money, the balance of money, so the time, space, money trifecta, is not tons of money. We don't want, well, it's not that we don't want, but we don't need to be rich. I don't need to be rich. I want to be comfortable. I want to have enough money to the point that I don't worry about money. Because when I had more money than I know what to do with, I randomly bought art supplies just because I was like, well, that's something I've always wanted to play with. And I played with it, and it didn't elevate my work in any significant manner. So having more money, like too much money, is not a great thing, because a lot of times I find that when I look back through my career, when I won't say I was poor, but when I had limited funds, very limited funds, I was substantially more creative because I had limitations. And this goes back through all of the time, space, money triangle, is that limitations are often the most sort of thing that spurs my creativity. If I had all three, time, space, and money, I'm not sure if I would be as creative or as thoughtful in my creativity. When you have a limitation, I find that I end up becoming more creative, trying to figure out a way to take that limitation and make it into something that I can use more to my advantage. Because I don't think having extra amounts of money really makes me a better artist. I can think of a number of artists off the top of my head that they have endless budgets and that they do not make better work because of it. So, but on the other hand, there are some artists that make magnificent work with, excessive budgets. So there's a balancing act. Plus, you also have to understand that it depends on your medium as well, because like if you're a stone carver and you can't afford marble or granite or any of the other great stones to work with, then yeah, there's going to be some limitations. So having limitations I find to be beneficial in many ways. As I said, it pushes me to take things that might not be the most natural expression of something and sort of problem solve and figure out a way to make it into something that is useful. So having enough money is really the crux of it, because you want to have enough to be able to basically get the supplies and the equipment and the whatever else you need, even enough money to pay for a studio space, to do your work without without barriers. And this is one of the things that is sort of money is about. not having a barrier to being able to achieve the thing you want in your creative endeavors. Because if you don't have enough money to do it, you're literally just gonna be sitting on the sofa going like, God, I had that, wish I had the money for that. Well, I do it all the time. Like, I'll be just sitting there, and I won't work on other projects because I'm dwelling on the fact that I don't have enough money to work to buy the thing to do the one project. And that's stymieing. And this is where, like having a dedicated space, going back to like how these are all interconnected and related to each other. Like, I find that if I'm out of money to do the thing I want to be doing, or the thing that I desire to be creating, if I just go down into my studio, which is my nice dedicated space where I do, even though I don't have the resources that I would necessarily want at the moment, I have lots of other resources. And so I can just look around and be like, oh, well, this will help me. I can try this thing on this. I can, attempt this in relation to that. I can put this particular material over this other material and see what happens with that, because I'd never tried it before. And, side note, eternally being sort of playful and inquisitive about how things function as far as how materials interact, how expressions can be created through different relationships of different materials, is something that you should keep your entire career. I feel bad for the people who like find a thing and then just keep doing the same thing over and over and over their entire lives. I mean, you can absolutely do the same thing over and over and over for like 5 years or 10 years. That's fine. But at some point you should grow sort of and evolve into something new. I find that personally that would be incredibly boring for me to like literally be doing the same thing for the rest of my life. So evolving is a great thing. And again, this balance of time, space, and money. Money allows for some of that growth. It allows for some of that evolution. And hopefully, as your life and my life progresses, we have more money to do what we need to do. Realistically, like my next big thing hopefully would be a bigger space. And so like you focus on something over the course of your career, and you say like, okay, the limitation that I'm currently having is time, space, or money. And you choose one of them to sort of say, okay, I'm going to invest more in some more time, or I'm going to invest more money into more space, or I'm going to invest more money into buying better equipment, or higher quality paint, or, some new tool, or whatever it is. And this is a constant sort of internal monologue that we all have. I certainly have it all the time. It's like, where is the most effective place I can put my money to make it so that I can continue to work, quite honestly. Like that's really the goal in the end, is just wanting to continue to work. The more I can work, the more I can make, the more I can sell, the more I can make these videos, the more I can do all this kind of stuff. So like the more opportunities to be in the studio makes me happy in many respects, but it also, in many ways, it makes me a little sad, because, time devoted to studio working, which I thoroughly enjoy, is time I take away from marketing and doing other sales types of things, which I am absolutely atrocious at. I am not my best salesperson. I really need somebody else to sort of focus on my sales for me. Though I'm trying. I'm working on it, but I'm not very good at it. What I am good at is teaching. What I am good at is creating, and so that's what I'm here to do. So again, what I'm trying to sort of impart to you is my years of sort of hindsight about money, is that like, don't let money stand in your way. It's not a literal barrier. You can choose over the course of time to save money, to put money, to invest money, to do whatever, to find the things that you need for your creative endeavors. Like when I was poor, what I did was I volunteered at a community or at a darkroom, a school darkroom. I said, oh, I'll watch over your darkroom as long as I can use the darkroom. So there, I didn't have the money to have my own darkroom, but I was able to sort of scoot my way into access to a darkroom, which included all the chemicals and all the space and everything that I needed. So, just because you can't necessarily buy something or you don't necessarily have the space for it doesn't mean you can't get access to it. I mean, these days, there's lots of great makers labs and all these kinds of great places that are these communal spaces to work with that I wish I had when I was a kid, but they're not, they weren't around then, but they're around now. So take advantage of them. They're fabulous. And they're not going to be where you're going to be your whole career. They're just going to be where you go to start something. And as you outgrow it, basically, you'll then start your own studio. But that's what makers labs are for, and they're really great at that. So engage in them if they are available in your area. Money is the bane of my existence. I wish that we as a society were more in the bartering system. I have lots of skills. I can do home repairs. I can do lots of different things: plumbing, electrical, drywall, all this kind of stuff. I wish that I could pay my bills like by bartering. Because I don't like money. It's not a chase that I'm after. I'm chasing it enough to have enough. I want to be comfortable, as I believe we all do. But I don't want excessive, because I feel like when I have excessive money, I then spend it on things that I then am obligated to continue to spend them on. I mean, it's a horrible capitalistic cycle. It's vicious. I hate it. But even if you're upgrading things, like if you upgrade to a better quality of paint or a higher end digital camera, then you suddenly have to buy better lenses, or then you have to suddenly, once you start using that higher quality paint, you're like, wow, I can't go back to that other stuff. This stuff's so much better. And so then you're sort of obligated. And then also you start a painting and you run out of paint. Well, you're obligated to buy the same paint again, the same price, to be so that your colors match. Like it's this horrible, vicious cycle capitalism is. But right now we're in the middle of getting ready for the elections of the U.S. president in the near future, and it's just like, oh, so depressing, the whole thing. But anyways, yeah. I mean, I love having money. I love spending money. But it's really hard to try and find those ways to make money. Yeah. In many ways, I love like Charles Bukowski. He's an author who wrote a book called Post Office that I read in college. But basically, he worked at a post office. He basically worked a crap job that he hated, civil service, 9 to 5 every week. And he just absolutely hated it. But it didn't use any of his creativity whatsoever. And he had boundless amounts of creativity when he got home and on his nights and weekends. And so he wrote extensively because he didn't use any of his creativity while sitting at work. And that's one really great way to do jobs. I've done many jobs like that. And I find that, when I get off work, I am like overwhelmed with creative energy because I basically like had to shut off my creativity for a while and focus on something else. So when I had time and space and money, I was like, okay, now I can just like throw it all in. So I found that very useful. Some people hate that idea. I chose the career of being a teacher. So, and of course, an art teacher. So I wanted to sort of put them together because I enjoy being able that when I go to work, that it's not a drudgery, that I'm not sad and like, oh God, I have to go to work. I want to enjoy going to work. You know, the old adage of like, if you enjoy your job, then you never work a day in your life kind of thing. I'm not sure that's totally true, but for the most part, it's great fun. And I chose that pathway as a way to try to give my creative life some amount of financial stability. And that's what I think all of us want, especially creative people, even more so than sort of traditional non-creative people, is that we want stability because our professions, our passions are not stable. You know, like the old way the actors and actresses in Los Angeles are all waiters on the side kind of thing. But even waiter and waitressing is not stable. But teaching, it can be very stable traditionally. I mean, these days the academic industry is moving more towards adjuncts and part-time workers, and so they're not giving the benefits that they used to, and not so much tenure anymore. I mean, like, oh God, I could go on and on about the trials and travails of modern academia, but that's a rant for another time. So, money, we all want it. We all never have enough. But being able to try to sort of take your time and your energy and sit back and think, okay, where is the most efficient slash effective slash smart place to put your money? You know, sometimes it's investing in a piece of equipment that you use even only somewhat frequently, and sometimes it's investing in space, sometimes it's investing in time, sometimes it's literally just like consumable products like your paints and your chemicals and your whatever else. But you're going to have to put some money in somewhere. So trying to be thoughtful and intentional about it is great. And oh yeah, on the side of money too, I have my opinion, totally my opinion on this. When it comes to like anything, whether it's computers, technology, camera equipment, paint, any sort of mediums of things, I find the cheapest stuff is good in many ways. If you're doing like a one-off thing and you just need something that will function. And then the highest end things, your amazing squirrel hair brushes and these kinds of things, and your top of the line cameras and whatever other mediums and techniques. I don't recommend, as a general whole in your studio, either of them. I would say, as for the most part, go for your like mid to slightly above average mid quality things, because oftentimes in the studio we're quite messy and sloppy and all this, and we're probably going to damage stuff, and we're probably going to destroy things, and we're going to use them for their unintended purposes. And so, buying something that was super expensive, it gets really depressing when you break it. And on the other hand, buying something really cheap and then it not being able to do the thing you wanted to do is also very annoying. So when it comes to spending your money, no matter what it is, whether it's like the quality of your paint, quality of your tools, quality of your whatever, I generally would go with sort of slightly above average. If there were 3 tiers of equipment and materials, it would be like low, mid, and high. I would definitely go for mid. Oftentimes when it comes to the high, you're paying for the tradition, you're paying for the brand, you're paying for the name and the gravitas and the pomposity of being able to go, oh yes, I painted this with my squirrel haired paintbrush. Or, oh yes, I shot this with my Canon, I don't know what the top of the line one is right now, camera. It's more of a pomposity than it is thing. Because like when I was in graduate school, I remember there was this class where we got into class and everybody put up their works, and it was a photography class, just to be clear. And everybody put up their works, and one student just sort of walked up and said, "What camera did you shoot this with?" And I just remember sitting there going, like, what does it really matter? And then they said, like, well, what lens did you use at this? What shutter speed? What aperture? Is it like asking all the technical things? What paper did you print this on? And I'm just sitting there going, like, none of that actually matters. Why does he care about any of that stuff? And I still feel that way. Like, I'm very much sort of a proponent of the idea of, like, poor musician blames his instrument. And also, of course, there's the proponent of creative can be creative with anything. So, like, if you're a good photographer, you can pick up any camera and make interesting photographs. I'm not going to say they're going to necessarily be like life-changing or amazing, but you can figure out the limitations and the opportunities that are available to you from any resource, and then work those to your advantage in some way. Same thing with every medium. So, fixating on the equipment, I don't think is necessarily the way to go. Whether that's consumable equipment or whether that's your saws and your chisels and your whatever else. Fixating on the nature of why. That's the most important. So, like, to end, let's try and sort of sum this up. Like, money is just a method for getting you to a place where you are able to effectively express the thing you want to express in your creative endeavors. So, like, why are you making your work? Why have you chosen, like, here, I'll give you, like, mine. Like, why do I choose to use gold leaf? Then, just to be clear, some of these videos you'll see gold leaf, some you'll see actually imitation gold leaf. I save the gold leaf for pieces that I feel are stronger, and I use imitation gold leaf when there's a large quantity, basically, because I'm not going to waste real gold leaf on that. And that's a money choice, so, like, I'm like, why would I spend the amount of money that real gold leaf would cost me on a piece that might fail? So if I'm feeling more confident with the piece, then I'm generally more inclined to use real gold leaf versus imitation gold leaf. But there's also a visual aspect to it as well. Sometimes I'm like, I want this to be very blingy, poppy, bright, shiny, which is what imitation gold leaf looks like, versus my 22.5 carat gold leaf, which is very warm and dark and rich, kind of a gold leaf. So if I want that rich, deep look of gold, then I would go more for the authentic gold. But if I want that super shiny, reflective, sort of tinny or aluminum-y look to it, I would actually go more towards the imitation, sometimes intentionally, not necessarily due to the money. So, I mean, all these different choices are about, they end up being about where am I choosing to put my money? And that's really what it comes down to, is like, what's the most efficient, effective way to spend my money in my creative endeavors? So, recently, like a couple years ago, my wife gave me a birthday gift of a big easel, very nice, big, full, traditional easel. And I'd always wanted one, and I was always like, well, but do I really need it? Boy, I love that thing, And there's also that balance of, like, anything that can reduce the barriers to you having enjoyment or just being, how do I explain this? Like, when I teach photography, I try to explain, like, people are always saying, like, or students are always asking, well, what camera should I buy? And I always say, go to the store, pick up the camera, touch it, put your fingers where all the buttons are and test them out. And whichever one feels the most natural, the one that feels the easiest, so that you won't even be needing to pay attention to the camera, but you can be paying attention to what you're photographing instead of sort of the technical aspect of how you're doing it with the camera, then that's the camera for you. So anything to reduce the amount of barriers between, like, what's in your head versus what you get in your creative output, that's the best whatever. And so, like, having an easel, a big proper easel, which I'm sure you're seeing in some of these videos where the pieces are upright, is such a pleasure to sit in front of and really sort of engage on a sort of just a experiential level where I can be looking directly at it versus having it on a tabletop where I'm always seeing it from perspective, I'm always seeing it from an angle kind of thing. So the the appreciation that you get for certain capabilities in your studio that make it so that your ability to just sort of just engage in your creative endeavor is so good, so good. I love it. I mean, I never knew I needed an easel until I got an easel, and now I can't imagine not having it. And that's just sort of the nature of it. Is there are lots of equipment and tools and devices that will give you some amount of pleasure in as far as even just the act of being sort of in the studio and doing the work. And it again just reduces the barriers that sort of stand between your creative mind and your expression of your work. In case you can't tell, by the way, I'm very much into the process of creating work. I'm very much that. The product, once a piece of art is done and it's completed and it's for sale or for exhibition, to a certain extent, it's a commodity at that point. And so I sort of disconnect from it at that point in many ways. The only thing I have to do is just write titles and artist statements at that point. But the process of creating it, the what to do, what not to do, how much is too little, how much is too much. This is the process that I thoroughly enjoy. But money was the topic of the day. Basically, I'm just trying to get to, like, don't fixate on money as a limitation. It's not something that should be standing in your way. It having limited funds is, as I said, can be a great problem solving opportunity. So you go, okay, I don't have funds to do this. Maybe instead of buying paint, you go out and you get some clay and some dirt and some rocks or leaves or whatever, and flowers, and actually make your own paint. Like I actually mix my own pigment from ground. Well, I don't mix my own pigment. I use pigment, ground pigment mixed with mediums versus buying pre-existing paints. So, like, get creative with it. Just don't let something like money, well, and going back through this little triangle, like, don't let money, space, or time stand in your way. Use whichever one of those three is a limitation on you, and lean into the ones that are not limitations, and try to just continue to push forward, because they will continually evolve and move around. One time you'll have plenty of money, plenty of space, no time. Sometimes you'll have plenty of time and no money and no space. So just keep pushing through, and the amount of these different sort of variables and opportunities will change over time. And don't try not to get discouraged. I mean, that's sadly, a lot of artists, as they get older, they're sort of the tradition of, like, the old bitter artist kind of thing, and, like, the trying not to get bitter. It sounds like a very low bar, but it really is kind of important, because a lot of creative people get very easily discouraged and easily bittered about the industry, and legitimately so in many places. I am not saying they should not be bitter. Like, they legitimately probably should be bitter, but trying to keep us away from that, I think, is a very good goal, because it doesn't do us any service to become bitter, and it doesn't do any service to the industry or to the reputation of creative people across the board, that we end up being bitter. So try not to be bitter. And I've got to listen to my own advice just as much as as I give it out too. So there you go. So money as a summation. So don't let money, time, or space stand in your way. See them as a opportunity to problem solve, but just be aware of the sort of constant balancing act of having more or less of any of these three things, and try to use it to your best ability. That's pretty much it. So good luck. Have fun in the studio.